Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we are going to talk about what is Dockerfile. So Dockerfile is just a text file with no extensions, and the naming conventions of a Dockerfile will be start from capital D followed by DOCKER Docker and a small FILE file and with no extension. So there is no extension for the Docker file, and Docker file will be just a similar text file but containing that in a Docker command, and we have a set of a Docker command which we can use it. I'll come into that in a bit later, but just understand that in this is one of that in Docker file, and where we can start that in a Docker documentations or comment with a hash symbol. So let's say hash create image based on the official node 6 image from the Docker hub, and we are using the from. So from is the keyword which is we can say that in a command for that in Docker, and then we are using the node which is that in name of that in node clone and latest. So this is that in node and we are referring that in latest, so it will be import that in a image from that in a Docker hub, and then create a directory where our f will be placed. So there is another command called run, and then mkdir. Mkdir will just create the directory for like minus p and forward slash user forward slash src forward slash app. So in this this directory will be created by the run mkdir minus p and usr forward slash src forward slash app, and then change the directory to that in so that our commands run inside this directory working dir. Work dir meaning the working dir, and it's changing into user src app, and then copy dependency definitions with a copy command. So all if you'll see that in command we are using that in capital like in from run work dir copy, and name of the file like in package.json forward slash user src forward slash app, and then expose the port that app run in. So there is another command called expose, which is exposing the port for container like for 200, which is by like node run on that input by default 4200, and then serve the app by that in a command. So this is the cmd command again, and what we are doing npm and then a start. So once this that line number 70 will be executed, that in and node will be started. So this is just a simple Docker file, and you can see that in just like in text file, but we are using that in set of command we have in that in a Docker, and you can use one by one, and by doing this once in a Docker file we can do that in automations. We can run all this like in manually on that in command prompt also, but that is not a right way. So uh, uh, what we are doing that in a step by step all command and putting into that in a Docker file. And as we know that in a Docker file don't have any extensions, and the naming conventions start with a D capital and Docker and then file. So let's talk something best practice for that in a Docker. I will not talk in more into that in details. You can refer that in like in best practice for writing the Docker file. So as you know that in this is just a text file and with no extensions. In another example you can refer that in and the good thing is that in a Docker image consists of a read-only layer, each of the which represent a Docker file instructions. So Docker file instructions is nothing but from this is the one instructions, copy is a second instructions, run is a third instruction, cmd is a fourth instructions. The layer are a stack, and each one that is delta changing from the previous layer consider the Docker file. So we are going to talk in more details what are that in layer and what is that in read on layer, write level representations of a Docker file, and like in command in details. So here we can see that in from create a layer from the Ubuntu, copy command to add files from your Docker client current directory, runs build that in your applications with a Mac, and cmd-5 is command run where the container is. So you can use that in this. So general guidelines and recommendations, create informal containers. We are going to talk in this into more details, but just understand whatever we are going to create, it will be considered as a informal. Understanding the build context. So build context is nothing but your current directory where you have here Docker file, and you are running that in command, then pipe docker throw that in std in, and many more. So you can refer these ones, and we'll talk like in bit later, and once we are going to do that in more example. And in high level, just understand this is like in way of writing the docker file, and what is that in docker. So we have a set of docker command, and that all will become under that in docker file. So there is another best practice we have, like in writing the docker file. If you have a multiple run, so make it like in together, and we'll see that what is that in advanced and disadvantage. So this is the quick video for what is the docker file, and I'm considering it's not too like in overhead for as of now. Just understand this is in a quick recap. Docker file is a text file with no extensions, and always start file name is like in D capital and OCKER a small, and then file is also a small together. And it will be a start from that in documentations by comment, or like you can start from the from, and that in whatever image you want, or latest versions by the tag or all, and then followed by that in a command, and then executions. So that's all about in these lectures. Mm, you know um, that's all.